Alright, welcome back to another episode of Movie Mayhem. As always, I'm Spanky.
And I am G.
Usual quick shout out to Chucky's Playground and everyone there. Post a link in the description. Join up and join us in some of the killer conversations we have.
Yeah, we have some exciting things going on there.
And as usual, shout out to the Metal Matt podcast. He is continuing to pump out episode after episode about any movie, music, whatever he likes. He does everything. The guy is a god.
Yep.
And as usual, Chucky115 Awesome is continuing constantly making these sweet images and captions for us regarding Chucky's Playground.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
And we'll just jump right into the episode this week. And another quirky movie, kind of like Napoleon Dynamite. Maybe a little more adult themed.
Yeah.
It's a movie that I remember seeing years ago when it came out.
I just saw it recently, a couple months ago.
Yeah, and the movie we're talking about is from 2002. It's called About Schmidt, starring Jack Nicholson. Mm-hmm. And the director of this movie is Alexander Payne, and he's known for a certain style of directing, and he's known for a couple of other movies. Like, another famous one is from 1999, Election, starring Matthew Broderick, Reese Witherspoon, Chris Klein. Another one is a recent one called Nebraska, starring Will Forte, Bruce Dern. And one thing about all of his movies they all take place in Nebraska, including About Schmidt. But anyway, this was a really weird movie. There isn't a lot to say.
Yeah.
It's one of those movies where there's not a lot that goes on. Mm-hmm. But it's again with some of the subtle things. It's more of like a journey. And it's
realistic.
Yes, it is.
Very realistic. Because I know, and I mean, without spoiling too much too early, I know of people, like my family and whatever, who have experienced similar things as Schmidt here.
So, to kick out, Warren Schmidt, he worked at an insurance company, and the movie just opens up with him just sitting there, staring at the clock like almost everybody does near the end of the day. And it's his last day of work. And he's retiring. He kind of lives a very droll life. His only daughter, Jeannie Schmidt, lives
in Colorado.
And, like, he comes home to his wife, who is played by June Squibb. And she's kind of just your typical old wife. She kind of controls him a little.
They're the typical, we've been married for much too long.
Yep. And, like, it's just a lot of subtle stuff. Like, it starts out like he's starting to get used to this retired life because he doesn't have anything to do. And there's kind of like the young hotshot guy that takes his place in the office. Mm-hmm. And, like, I believe he goes to offer his help to him one day in the office, and the guy kind of blows him off a little bit. And he goes outside, and you remember what they found?
Yeah, everything they found.
Well, his life's work.
His life's work was sitting at the dumpster.
Yep, all boxed up, and it's a lot. That's kind of sets the tone. It's not like this, not everything that happens to him is just horrific, but it's kind of like,
I believe he said he was with the company for like 40 years.
Yeah.
And 40 years, and that is what happened.
And it's just kind of like the world is constantly shitting on him. Like, nothing really goes his way. He's still kind of a weird guy. And he even, like, on like an impulse, like, those commercials you see where you can adopt an African child and whatnot, he kind of falls for one of them, and he starts donating to a little Tanzanian boy named Ndugu. Mm-hmm. And that is a big theme throughout the movie.
It's very important to remember Ndugu.
Very important, because as this movie progresses, he's writing Ndugu letters.
Yeah.
And it starts out like typical nice, like, how are you, Ndugu? It's typical, but then he kind of like snaps
and
mentally.
Goes into his life story.
He goes into these rants, how he hates certain people and all that, but, he starts doing this, and then I think one day he's just going out of town, and his wife's home, and then she just drops dead.
Yeah.
She had, like, a brain clot in her head, so...
Yeah.
And so that kind of brings his daughter and her fiance Randall, who is just a freaking goober.
And who Walter Schmidt does not approve of at all. He does not. He
constantly
like
uses the phrase "up to snuff." He doesn't think he's up to snuff. Like, you know, Randall...
Quote, unquote, Jeannie is a little past her prime, but she can do much better.
Yeah. And he describes stuff like this in his letters to Ndugu.
Yes, this little 5-year-old African boy.
Yeah, and, like, Randall is just... Yeah, he's a loser. He's got, like... He's one of those guys with not a lot of hair on the top of his head, but he has a ponytail. He's a waterbed salesman, and... But, you know, Jeannie loves him, and they're planning on getting married. He's not totally for it, but they kind of come visit. Jeannie has some concerns about her dad being able to take care of himself, and he assures it's okay. And then after she leaves, it kind of shows, like, the week after. Like, after she leaves and he lives on his own, how bad things have gotten.
Yeah, and how... And it kind of opens up a theme because, of course, he's grieving over his wife. And I think, like, it's what an older person... I remember, like, relating a little personally, like, when my grandfather's wife died. He became Schmidt. Like, he stayed up really late, got addicted to infomercials, didn't clean, didn't do any of that. But then Schmidt discovers it kind of gets a little bit sad because he's going through his wife's closet and he's smelling her clothes because he misses her. But then the box of letters falls
and it's
down.
Love letters from one of his good friends, and she's been having an affair with him. I don't know if, like, it was recent.
It was years ago.
Years ago, and she kept him, and there's a scene where he just attacks him in the parking lot, but it's not like he goes and kicks the shit out of him. He's just, it's like old man punches. It's just the weird noises, and it's just kind of like, he's a very odd old man. It's not, like, odd in the sense you notice it unless you sat down with him for a while. There's one scene I love in particular when he's starting to take care of himself, and he just goes downstairs looking for food to eat, and the house is a mess. He's opening cupboards, nothing there, nothing there, nothing there. There's flies flying around, and there's a hard taco shell. That's the only thing in the damn cupboard, and he just eats it nonchalantly. He has no, like, facial expression, and he just eats it. And one of the other things, like, is they saved up for him and his wife to get an RV, so when he retired, they could do a cross-country road trip. And that's another scene I liked, because he eventually kind of just snaps and decides to... It's one of those movies where it's like a journey. Mm-hmm. He decides to go on a road trip. Yeah. Pretty much to go see Jeannie. And he's at the supermarket stocking up, and it just shows his arms. Man. Yeah, like, his arms are all full of, like, Hungry Man frozen pizzas and shit. That's all.
And he's essentially, after he found out that his wife had cheated on him, he essentially tried to rebel. Like, one of the things that you learned early on in the movie is that she controlled everything. She wouldn't let him piss standing up.
She made him sit down.
And so he finally was about to sit down, but he's like, fuck this, I'm gonna stand. And he just pisses everywhere. And I just thought it was really funny. But
so he just up and decides to go on this, this trek to Colorado to see Jeannie before the wedding. He was only scheduled to come out like 2 days before the wedding. Something like that. So that's where the meat of this movie is his journey. And as I said, he's writing in Ndugu this whole time.
Yeah, the whole time.
About these different things, like, as I said, it starts off normal. He's like, I put in a little something extra for you. Hope you enjoy.
Extra, like, $5.
Yeah, and then he goes, oh, I don't like that Randall. He's a stupid ass. And he just goes on these rants. And then he calms himself down in the middle of it. And then he gets back to a calmer tone.
And my favorite thing is, well, I better wrap this up so you can get yourself something to eat.
Exactly, like, he's just kind of unaware of things, and he's kind of in his own world, and, so there's a lot of odd parts. As I said, there's not a lot that goes on in this movie. It's a pretty simple concept. It's just very dark humor. Mm-hmm. It's another one of those movies where you either like or you don't. A lot of people think it's very dry and boring, or they don't have the patience for it. Mm-hmm. And, like, I'm trying to remember some of the specific stuff on his trip. Like, he goes around to where he is from, his hometown. Yeah. Was it he finds where his old house used to be, and it turns out it's a tire store.
Yes.
And he parks there, and he goes, and he's driving in the RV, so he's parking this RV in all these damn spots where cars are supposed to park.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes in there, and he just starts talking to the random clerk in there. He's like, oh, this is where I used to live. It's like, you lived in the store? And he's like, no, this is where my house was. And he would explain, that's where my bedroom was. And the store clerk is just kind of like, this is a crazy ass old man. He just kind of puts up with it. And that's like kind of one of the days of his adventures. The other one is he stops at the RV park.
Yes.
And there's the couple from Wisconsin.
Yeah, so essentially they meet up with Spanky. And, no, but they meet up with these ridiculously nice, like, two nice people. Like, two nice people.
Yeah. And I think they invite him over for dinner. They
invite him over for dinner and for some beers. And it looks at, like, so Walter's been drinking and he was alone.
Yep. With
Mrs. Wisconsin, because I don't know what her name.
According to IMDb, I believe they're John and Vicky Russ.
That's right, with Vicky. And it kind of sets a tone because he's just so lonely.
Yeah, and she's picking up on the vibes.
Like, you just seem, like, you poor old man, you're very lonely. And then he goes...
He takes it the wrong way.
He takes it the wrong way and just goes in for the kill.
Yeah, and he makes a move on her.
And she's like, absolutely not! Or however you Wisconsin people speak.
And then so he kind of just leaves and he starts driving away and you can see the husband walking back with the beer, kind of like, doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Or there's like... He kind of has, like, his sentimental moments.
Where he's just kind of... Well, that particular night where he is sitting on top of the RV.
He gets, like, those miniatures his wife liked to collect.
Yeah.
He thought they were stupid because she always wasted money on them. And then he kind of gets all sentimental. So it's like he's bipolar.
Yeah.
Almost. And, like, he gets these little figurines and he's kind of just looking at them all neat. And he puts them on top of the roof of the RV and he passes out. Yeah. And then, like, the next day, he just doesn't give a shit. Doesn't he just drive off?
Yeah.
And they fall off?
Yeah.
The man does not give a damn.
Nope, not one.
And, you know, that's a good chunk. And where the movie really picks up for me is when he finally gets to Colorado. And he gets to Jeannie and Randall's place. They're living with, I believe they're living with Randall's parents right now.
With Randall's parents right now, yeah, until they get married.
Until they get married. And
Randall's mother.
Randall's mother is played by Kathy Bates.
So you know how that's going to turn out.
Yeah, because she has that, like, very distinguished, distinct type of character. She's really odd and quirky and definitely brings a lot of comedy.
Yeah, she is fantastic. I love
and
Kathy Bates.
She's the type of mother, like a quick comparison is like if you've seen the Meet the Parents series, like Ben Stiller's mother in that movie, how she's open about sex and all that.
Yeah.
Because that's how she talks in this movie about Randall and Jeannie with their sex
Walter
life.
should feel very at ease knowing that his daughter will always be taken care of that way.
Yeah, and Walter is just the unknown for Walter. This is so not in his comfort zone.
No.
These people are not who he is. He comes from, like, that conservative town in Nebraska. Mm-hmm. And these are, like, they're pretty much hippies, almost. Like, at least the mom is, kind of. She's one of those hippie love childs, and she's very open sexually and with how she talks, and I think she lives there, then Randall's dad and his, like, doesn't he have, like, an Asian wife?
Yeah. Sandra.
What was her name?
Sandra.
And I
think
think
Randall's brother, who doesn't speak.
He does a little bit. I think they're just kind of all pissed at him because he had some, like, money making plan that didn't.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
And he's like, you would have made money if you would have stuck with it. So it was a pyramid scheme, and
yeah.
So it's just a lot of the family dynamics that go on there and whatnot, and just hanging out, like, the awkward dinner conversations.
Oh, yeah. That dinner is my favorite. When the father, Randall's father, who is the only one who seems slightly normal, is trying to, like, thank Walter for coming and how, like, we're a family, and then Kathy Bates is like, just shut up! You're embarrassing yourself. You're embarrassing Sandra.
Sandra's like, no, he's not.
And just, shut up, Sandra. And she's just, can't we just enjoy our food? I don't know why. I just thought that
like, eat your fucking chicken or something like that.
Something like that.
And then it's just great. It's if you like dysfunctional families,
which I love.
This part of the movie is for you. And it kind of another thing is Randall sells waterbeds, so of course his home is aptly supplied with a waterbed for Warren to sleep in when he stays.
And when you're closer to 70, I'm sure that's the last place you want to sleep.
And so Walter wakes up and he's all miserable. He can't move. Mm-hmm. He's like, ah.
And then Jeannie has a friggin' meltdown because her father can't.
She's thinking her dad's being
faking,
difficult.
Because that night before, we kind of skipped when he's like, Jeannie, can I talk to you?
Yeah, he talked to her outside.
You don't have to do this kind of a thing. And then she's like, whoa, I'm going to do it, whatever.
Yeah. So, Warren is being a little bit difficult, but he's all cockeyed from this waterbed. And Randall, of course, comes in and he drops a model number with the water. He's like, it couldn't be the waterbed. That's the X800 series. Or something like that.
And then Warren's just it's the bed.
It's the bed. And he's laying there all miserable. He can't move. And then what is it? Doesn't Kathy Bates slips him some some type of prescription painkiller?
Yeah.
I don't even know what it was. But it's expired from years ago when she had a hysterectomy or something. She's like, I still think they're good. And she gets him down in the hot tub. And then she's all talking to him from the window. How's it going?
And he's enjoying it because he's sore, whatever.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, it's great. He's kind of opening up. He's a little more calm. He's not as
because he's high.
Yeah, he's. Oh yeah, because at the church rehearsal.
Yeah, he literally.
He's drooling almost.
He's drooling because he couldn't. And then on the way home, he asked Kathy Bates, whatever you gave me, let me know.
Was great.
So I can get some myself.
Yeah, and so it cuts back to the hot tub, and he's just sitting there all relaxed, and then this is one of G's favorite parts.
Oh my god, favorite as in, scream.
What happens, G?
Okay, so Kathy Bates, being the sex-loving, weird woman that she is in this movie, decides that she's going to come down and very friendly take off her clothes and jump on in completely naked, and you get to see it. You get to see everything.
Different strokes for different folks.
Come on, I know you like boobs, but she's 60.
I'm not a judgmental man. Anyway, yeah, so she starts trying to put the moves on him. She's getting all close and whatnot, and then that's...
And Warren's bad trip.
Yeah, that's when he can't take enough and he hops in bed. And then then it pretty much cuts to the wedding. It's wedding day, and the wedding for the most part goes off without many hitches. It's just... Of course, Walter's kind of sitting there.
We need to decide what his name is. Is it Warren or is it
Warren,
Walter?
It's Walter. I keep mixing those two up.
No, it's Warren. IMDb
Warren.
says it. Okay, so it's actually Warren. Ignore us if we've ever said Walter.
Yeah, but, so it kind of, the wedding kind of just goes off pretty much as planned, except Warren he's kind of sitting there half the time, all mopey looking. He's, obviously not happy, but he's not, raining on everyone's parade.
No, and at first, I honestly thought, because it comes with the reception, and of course, a father has to say something, and it's the only person in Jeannie's family. She was an only child, and her mother died, and so I'm thinking, he's gonna go balls. He's gonna just spit out what he has to say.
And this is, the opportunity that has been looming for him the entire movie.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the movie is no one's taking him seriously, they're not listening to him, or they're not really giving a shit about what he has to say.
Yeah.
So, what were you getting at, G?
I was basically I thought when he was gonna pick up the microphone and said, I don't have a speech prepared, but over the last few days I've gotten to know Randall and his family, and I'm literally thinking, oh my god, he's gonna go apeshit.
He's gonna go apeshit.
He's gonna go apeshit, and he's gonna tell her exactly how he feels. And as a viewer who you're sympathizing with Warren this whole movie, you're almost hoping that he will.
Yeah.
But he honestly, it's like the decision where I can do this and ruin the best day of my daughter's life.
Uh-huh.
Or, like, I could have whatever. And he chooses her over him.
He just sucks it up.
Makes up this bullshit about how great his family is and how happy he is for Jeannie and for Randall.
Mm-hmm.
And then runs to the bathroom.
Yep.
In, like, fury.
Yeah. So, and, you know, as I said, like, the events of this movie where he's dealing with the family and all that, it kind of, it doesn't really blow up at all. No. It just happens. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, the wedding happens. And then it's time for him to go back home.
Yeah.
And he continues driving home. You know, obviously the trip doesn't take as long as it did to get there because he drives straight home. And this is where Ndugu comes to play. Yeah. Because he gets home and, you know, he picks up all his mail. And mind you, he's been writing Ndugu this whole time. And he grabs his mail, he's sorting through it, random stuff, and then he sees an international envelope from Tanzania. And it's, I don't remember what her name is.
She is a sister to the shelter. Like, she's a nun.
Yeah, and she cares for the children of that foundation. So it's pretty much a letter from Ndugu. And he's just reading it. And it's just saying all these nice things about Ndugu. You know, that he was recently treated for an eye infection, but he's better now. He's 5 years old. He can't read or write. He likes to eat melon.
Yeah. They literally added that. He likes to eat melon, but he loves to paint.
He loves to paint and all this other stuff.
Can't read or write, but really appreciates his letters.
Yeah, so... And it's just a very, like, really heart-wrenching, heartwarming end because...
I cried.
Because, this is where it does get really, like, oh my god.
It just takes a total turn.
Because, and there's a lot of theories about this ending, which we'll discuss in a minute, but, like, it also says, like, Ndugu has enclosed for you a painting. Ndugu hopes you enjoy his painting. And it's literally...
Because, but before you even disclose that, before we're even getting to the letter, it's like Warren's writing his last letter to Ndugu, and he's saying about how he's realizing over the last few days when his daughter's getting married that he hasn't made a difference. 40 years working for an insurance company, they throw away his work. His marriage went to shit. His wife cheated on him.
Pretty much his life was meaningless.
Is essentially, and that he made no good difference, and he's just waiting to die at this point.
Yep, so... He opens this painting up, and it's just your basic dumbass kid drawing. You know, it's a stick figure. It's two stick figures holding hands, and you know, there's no right or anything, but you know, I think you're made to believe it's Warren and Ndugu.
And it's just silent for about a minute.
And he's just staring, and then it cuts to Jack Nicholson's face, and he's just crying, and he's smiling at the same time. He's kind of got like that, almost like a small chuckle. And, like, I'm thinking those are, like, tears of happiness.
As in, like, because his life did make, his, like, donations, whatever, did make a difference in his life. Yeah. So he matters to somebody, and it shows.
Like, and it cuts to the credits right after that. That's how it ends.
There's no bullshit after. It's like, and I remember crying. I'm like, this is ridiculous.
It's not like there's a post-credits scene where Ndugu flies in and Warren and Ndugu start causing a ruckus in the city or something like that. It's not some weird ass movie like that.
No.
It just ends like that, and it's so. Like, there's just a couple theories that go on. It's like, people, obviously, like, a lot of the negative people on the internet like to be like, think of it as a negative ending to where he's crying because he's so distraught that throughout all of this and all his giving to Ndugu, he got some shitty painting. And that's all. And so they're thinking he's just like, I'm done with this life. This is stupid. I can't believe it. You know, all is for naught. But, like, that's just one opinion, and for the most part, I tend to agree with G, where it's the more positive outlook that he's crying, and he's realized he's made a difference and impact on somebody's life when he's been going through all this crap where it doesn't seem like he matters.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a small gesture, and it kind of just shows that that's like all he needed.
Yeah.
Because it kind of, like, if you pay attention to the movie, he doesn't kind of really get that throughout the movie. I mean, besides Kathy Bates trying to horn in on him.
Yeah.
like, he gets stepped on a lot.
Mm-hmm. And
it's just, he doesn't get a lot of appreciation shown for him. For the things he does.
And it's just so... it's... I don't know, Spanky. I've received, like, because I have a younger sister or whatever, and I felt like whenever I get a picture, it warms your heart because
it does.
You mean something to them.
Exactly. Like, I have stuff drawn by nieces or nephews and stuff and little cousins, and it's awesome. It's a good feeling to get something like that.
It is. It's a great feeling.
So, like, that's about Schmidt. It's a very odd movie. It's not very eventful,
but it's so realistic.
It is,
because there are so many people who do go through stuff like that, especially widowers.
And it's very Alexander Payne, who's the director. That's his style. He does a lot of stuff like this, and I highly recommend it especially if you're into these quirky stuff. And as I said, it's kind of like that dark humor. Like, a lot of times you don't really know if you're supposed to laugh.
Mm-hmm.
But I found myself cracking up the entire movie.
Well, yeah, it's also because your humor has no barriers.
Nope.
But essentially, I think it's going to be you in 40 years.
Yeah, that's kind of what I look forward to growing up and being like.
Retiring from your insurance company.
Yeah, and other stuff like that. You know, finding my life's work thrown out in the dumpster.
Yeah.
And then, like, yeah, as I said, it's kind of a hit or miss movie. It's one of those, definitely. It's the main complaint is people are like, oh, it's so boring. It's like, well, then they're not picking up on some of the other stuff.
But it's such, like, personally, I think it's such a good movie that you can relate to. I love movies that you can relate to that are not too, like...
sappy or...
Michael Bay.
Or too dramatic, yeah. It's a little more realistic, as you say.
Yeah, it's not like that one movie coming out, If I Stay. Like, come on.
Yeah, and... Yeah, so... Alright, well, that wraps it up for today. That's about all the time we have.
Yep.
So, thanks for listening. This is a great movie. As I said, I recommend it. And the next movie we're going to watch is going to be a first-time viewing for G, which has a little concern for me because I remember the first time I saw it, I wasn't the biggest fan, and it was a movie I love the more I watch it. And that is the movie The Big Lebowski.
I thought you were going to say Footloose.
No, we're not watching Footloose. But The Big Lebowski, a cult classic starring Jeff Bridges, John Goodman, Steve Buscemi, Terry Reid's in there, Philip Seymour Hoffman. It's just a great movie. I recommend it. As I said, it's a cult classic. It has a very big following.
Mm-hmm.
So... until next time, just keep it classy.
See you later.